This review has been made possible by Toyota of Naperville. As you know, Toyota has tons of brand new Toyotas available for purchase, but did you know that they also have a remarkable selection of used cars? Head on over to toyotaofnaperville.com and look through hundreds of used cars for sale right now.
Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 2009 Toyota Prius. Up front is a 1.5 liter inline 4 as well as a hybrid drive system. Down below is a 1-speed transmission. Now I'm super excited to be driving this year 2009 Toyota Prius for two reasons. First of all, I haven't reviewed one of this generation before. I've reviewed plenty of newer Priuses and those videos will be at the end of this one, but I haven't done this. This has been the internet's punching bag for a couple of years now. This car gets a lot of hate, and we'll talk about why. The second reason I'm excited to be driving it is because this car has 101,000 miles on it. So this gives me a good glimpse of how these things hold up after being driven for years and years and years. This has been stress tested by a previous owner because this is Toyota of Naperville's used vehicle. And so let's see how it stacks up. Let's see if it holds together. Let's see if that glue is still in place. So let's get back to that hybrid drive system. So like I said, it has a 1.5 liter inline 4 under the hood. That is a gasoline engine, but it also has an electric motor on board. Now, the Prius is the most popular hybrid in the world, or at least it was at the time when it came out, this vehicle specifically. And so, all hybrids work differently, but how this one works is that there's an electric motor working with the gasoline engine. From a start-stop, the Prius uses an electric motor to get going. It does the heavy lifting, the heavy torque to get the car rolling, because once a vehicle's rolling, it's actually quite easy to keep it rolling. That's one of Newton's laws. And so once it is driving and cruising, it switches over to the gasoline engine. The gasoline engine is very efficient when cruising. Gasoline engines really only suck gas when starting and stopping. Once you're cruising, they just sip, 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 sip. And then once you start braking, there is a regenerative braking system that takes the friction from the brakes and sends it back as electricity back into the batteries. So you can't actually plug this in. This is not a plug-in hybrid. It just uses an electric motor to sort of fill in the gaps where a gasoline engine would really suck fuel. So that allows this here Prius to get 51 miles to the gallon in the city and 48 on the highway. Of course, that 48 on the highway is because it is in full gasoline mode. Now, we will do a hard acceleration test here because when you do a hard acceleration, both the electric motor and the gasoline motor actually work together. So we'll pull up here on the back straightaway out here on the test track. The vehicle is fully warmed up. I'll put my window down. You're not really gonna hear anything. I don't have sport mode or anything like that. So 1, 2, 3, go. It's not fast. Really didn't expect it to be either, but it's fine. It moves, and that's the important part. Like I said, paired to it is a 1-speed CVT transmission. This is pretty standard for hybrids. It doesn't have a bunch of gears or anything like that. It's fine. You don't really notice it. It is what it is. Last but not least, the Prius is front-wheel drive, and I do also want to touch on the battery packs for a second. If you are looking to buy a used Toyota Prius, these older cars sometimes had battery issues where the batteries wouldn't really hold a charge all that much. That means the vehicle's still drivable, but you're not going to get as good fuel economy, and exchanging the batteries, replacing the batteries can get pretty expensive. So if you're meeting someone to purchase their Prius, ask about the battery. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the interior. We have a couple interesting things to talk about in here, some that I like and some that I really dislike. Well, in front of me, way up on the dash, I have a little gauge cluster. I have my gear off to the left, my speed in the middle, fuel and odometer on the right. This is pushed off way far on the dash. It feels like a fighter jet or the Matrix or something. This feels really late 90s revolutionary internet sort of look. I don't know why, because it's sort of analog of digital, if that makes sense. Like, it's definitely a digital screen, but it's like the earliest of digital screens. I honestly really like it, and it's pushed up far and out of the way. You don't really pay attention to it. You glance at your speed every once in a while, but that's really it. On the steering wheel on the left, I have my volume controls, mode, and skip track, as well as my temperature controls. I miss having temperature controls on the steering wheel. I recently reviewed an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme from 1993, and that had steering wheel AC controls, and I loved it. I think this needs to make a comeback in mainstream cars, and the Prius has it. Love that. On the right, I have my map info, voice command, and phone option buttons, as well as more climate control options. Again, love the fact that it's on the steering wheel. To the left of me, I just have a gauge dimmer switch, and on the door, I have my power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Up on the top of the door, I do have a JBL speaker, which is a very nice upgrade for the Prius. The sound system is decent for 2009 standards. Moving into the center, we have a very interesting infotainment system. So this is the center display of the Prius, and a couple things you can do in here. First of all, I can go to this display, bring up the brightness, contrast, things like that. Then I do have info. I can do trip information, maintenance, telephone, calendar, screen settings, things like that. Then I have my climate controls, and I'm really not a fan of the fact that they are in the touchscreen. Now, it is better by the fact that I have them on the steering wheel and I can control them buttons, so if the screen does go out, I can still use my climate controls. But I really hate having climate controls in the radio. It just takes too many buttons to do something. Oh, and it just goes away. I guess it just goes away if you're not touching it. So I really like physical climate controls, not a big fan of the screen. Then I have my audio here. I do have Bluetooth aux in, as well as radio stations, of course. I have menu over here, destination, and my map, things like that. So this does have navigation built in, which is very, very nice. I do like this maintenance screen. This sort of looks like an old Gran Turismo game, sort of, with like the car wash icon and things like that. Really, really nice. You keep track of all your maintenance stuff. Again, this is really good for non-car people because not everyone knows that you should change your oil between every 3,000 and 5,000 miles, things like that. One last thing I do want to talk about is the backup camera. And yeah, this one is broken, as you might be able to tell. Sadly. But normally, I'll get that beeping to stop. Normally this would have a backup camera, which is very, very nice for 2009. Unfortunately, this one just happens to be broken. Down below the infotainment system, we have the hazard switch, odometer, and miles per hour / kmh, so you can switch your units. And then I have the radio itself. One thing I dislike about the radio is the fact that you can push in the volume knob so it doesn't stick out. So you pop it out to scroll. That's fine. But when you push it in, it doesn't mute the radio. It just pushes the button in so you can't use it. Down below that radio, I do have an openable cubby. It's a nice little space to put some things, but not too much. To the left of the radio and cubby, this is where you find your gear shifter. And this is part of the Prius that I really dislike because it is very, very strange. I have reverse, neutral, and drive off to the left, and then B is for braking. Basically, this is like mountain or like low range mode. But just using the shifter is very odd. Almost no other car is like this besides the Lexus CT 200H, which is literally a rebadged Prius, so it makes sense. It's very odd to get used to. It took me a second to find park because it's its own separate button. And then when you do put it into drive, the gear shifter doesn't stay where you put it. You put it down into drive, and then it boing backs up into, I guess, home position or whatever it is. Really dislike the shifter. I think it takes way too long for me to understand. I obviously understand it now, but it shouldn't have even been a question. Moving into the center console, I do have two cup holders. I have one on top and one flip out at the bottom. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test. And of course, unfortunately, the big friggin' bottle does not fit in either of the cup holders, flip out or stationary. The center console is massive, lots of storage in there, and I do have an aux port as well as a 12-volt outlet for all of your charging needs. Moving on to the seats don't really have much texture to them. I think if Honey Nut Cheerios was a seat, this is it. There's not much to it. And I am slightly struggling to get comfortable in them. They are a little bit hard. They don't really hold you in. These feel very basic, very economy. However, something I wanted to point out about the interior is let's talk about that 101,000 miles for a sec. I don't sense it. Sure, the infotainment system is dated by modern standards. And the top of the steering wheel, some of the seams on the steering wheel, you could see ever so slightly it is starting to wear a tiny bit. But looking at the interior as a whole, if someone plopped me into this car blindfolded and I took the blindfold off and they said, hey, how many miles do you think is on this car? I'd say, I don't know, maybe 50,000. It's a little bit older of a vehicle, and I would be half off. This interior has held up incredibly, incredibly well, which can't be said about same year Dodge products or Jeep products or Fiat products. That just goes to show the interior build quality of Toyotas, at least in 2009, was still there. And I drove a 1989 Toyota Camry, and the story was the same. That car held up incredibly well. I've driven other 90s and 2000s Toyotas, and the story is the same each time. These interiors hold up really, really well. Are they super luxurious? No, not at all. But they hold up well. They last. They go the extra mile where a lot of other vehicles' interiors just don't. Two more things about the interior before we talk about the back seats. I do have dual opening glove boxes. So I have a top and bottom glove box, which is really nice. And then down below the glove boxes, I have a 12-volt outlet. On sports cars, this is basically a dedicated outlet for a radar detector, but putting a radar detector in a Prius is almost laughable. So with all that out of the way, let's go talk about the back seats. All right, so we're in the back of the 2009 Toyota Prius, and a couple of things to note back here. First of all, fold out 2 cup holders back here from the center console, as well as I do have a center console, but this is just basically a foam brick. The space back here is fantastic. My knees are not hitting the seat in front of me, and this is my driving position. Headroom is great. I'm 5'11", and I still have a little bit of room to spare. Back seat is actually very, very good. If you are going to drive people around or something like that, this is fantastic. I have little speakers on the doors. And again, everything is held up back here as well. The seats are very basic, but they have stayed basic over 100,000 miles and not changed a bit, which is great. I really am impressed with the back seats. That scared the out of me. The gasoline engine turned on and the car moved back and forth a little bit. I thought I was gonna have to shove it out of gear. It's not in gear. Whew! If you want to see what I legitimately look like panicked, there it is. That was a little unsettling. Let's go talk about the trunk and cargo space. All right, so first of all, before we actually get into the trunk, something that has always kind of perplexed me is the fact that I get this sort of spoiler, but also this is a window and that's a window. So you actually get 2 windows in the back. It's actually 2 different pieces of glass, which is very, very interesting, but we can open it up, and Priuses are hatchbacks technically. Now you can put those seats down, and I have tons of space back here. I have a little light off to the side here, which is very nice. I can pull this up and I have tools and things like that. I get this nice Prius badge down at the bottom. Tons of room back here. This is really, really good. This is fantastic and I love it. You'll be able to fit plenty of things back here. And you guys always ask, let me put the seats down just to show you guys how much room you can really get. Bada bing, bada boom. One thing I forgot to mention, first of all, let's talk about this. Tons of room. If you're moving tons of space in here, you will be able to fit plenty with the seats folded down, really nice. But the thing I forgot to mention in the driving portion of the review is I don't know what this material is. This carpet and the leather mixed together really, really reminds me of my 1998 Dodge Ram. It just smells the same, and I obviously grew up in that car. That was the car my dad had growing up, and then I eventually drove into high school, things like that. So it smells very similar to that. Not sure what that smell is, but it's here. Last but not least, I have this very interesting diagram that the handle is back here to pull it down. Very unnatural to pull it down this way. Normally, I want to pull it down like that, but I guess that's why they put the diagram. okay? And I was not strong enough to do it the first time, so I have to touch the paint. Let's see if I can do it a second time. There we go. Now we got to talk about the looks, and this is one of the downsides, I think, of the Prius. Well, I think the Prius looks contempt. I think it looks very contemporary. I think it looks modern, and it's pretty much become iconic. Brian in Family Guy even drives a Prius. And I got it in the color red because of the movie The Other Guys, where they drive a red Prius. And so, in that movie, that car gets called a lot of names. They say I feel like I'm driving around in a lunchbox, among other non-PG words. And so let's talk about that for a second. Why do I call this car the internet's punching bag? Well, Priuses have a sort of reputation with car enthusiasts in the fact that all car enthusiasts hate Priuses. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And back in the day in high school, I drove my big white pickup truck to high school every day, and I wore flannels that were $8 from Menards. I listened to Dirk's Bentley. I went to football games on Friday night, and I hated the Prius. But really, I was just trying to find myself in high school. I didn't know really who I was. I was trying to identify as something I wasn't. I was trying to be a country boy in a very suburban town. It didn't really make sense. But that was the point in my life where I hated the Prius. I thought the Prius was too soft and only losers drove Priuses and I remember back in high school, before I asked my girlfriend out, we were driving back from lunch or something and there was a Prius in front of us and I swerved around it and I was like, I hate those things. But now my frontal cortex is better formed. I don't hate the Prius anymore. The reason the Prius gets so much flack is because it's a soft, unaggressive vehicle for non-car people. That's the biggest thing, is that it's for non-car people. If you're into cars, you don't buy a Prius. Your cool uncle doesn't buy a Prius. Your librarian drives a Prius. Intense people don't drive Priuses. I don't know why in my mind that like a librarian and an English teacher are the least intense people on the face of the planet. I've definitely met some intense librarians. But you know what I mean. People that don't have egos drive Priuses. Sure, there was a time where driving a Prius was sort of a fashion statement really quickly, where, you know, people with egos are like, oh, I'm saving the world by driving a Prius. But that died out pretty soon. They moved on to the next fad, Tesla Model 3s. But people who actually keep Priuses, drive Priuses regularly, things like that, they're non-threatening because this car is non-threatening. It's soft around the edges. It doesn't have a giant gaping mouth at the front. It doesn't have a loud exhaust. It doesn't go fast. The Toyota Prius has a 600 square foot studio apartment and couldn't ask for anything better. It's content. And I think that's why it became the internet's punching bag. That's why people make fun of it. This is the kid in high school that just sat at lunch, did the Rubik's Cube, and went on its way. And you know what? I guarantee you that kid that did the Rubik's Cube at lunch got way more out of that than the other kids making fun of each other and shooting spitballs at lunch. Those kids are doing 5 to 10 while the Rubik's Cube kid is probably owning a company at this point. So yes, this car is soft, it's malleable, it's cute, it's all the things that masculinity tries to be not. But that's okay. This car is a great car for someone who's not into cars. They want something that's good on gas. They want something that's just quiet. They want something that works. And my last talking point is, again, that 101,000 miles. This car has been around the equator 4 times. 100,000 miles. And yet it has held up so well. It's built like a Toyota because it is a Toyota. This is kind of almost the most famous Toyota from the 2010s. Toyota's motto is let's go places. And the Prius lets you do that. Are you going to come off as a bad boy? No. Are you going to stop the paparazzi on the red carpet? No. Are you going to be in an action movie unironically? No. But that's okay. Not everyone has to be the star of the movie. Sometimes it's nice to just have a comfortable supporting role. and that's okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Toyota of Naperville for letting me take out their 2009 Toyota Prius. This is one of their used vehicles on the lot. They have a bunch of other used cars. So if you're looking for a new car, please go check them out. Or if you're looking to sell your vehicle, sell it to Toyota of Naperville. They are looking for vehicles to stock their lot. As you guys know, there is a huge industry shortage of vehicles. So they are looking to buy your car for top dollar. If you've been contemplating getting rid of your car, definitely sell it to Toyota of Naperville. Helping them is helping me, and I deeply appreciate it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.